Hi, everyone. This is Jackie Cooper with the Blockchain Legal Institute talk show, and I'd like to welcome everyone back to this episode and also ask that you like and subscribe, as there are other talk shows in the queue, and we're very excited to have the conversations that are about to be shown. So today I have a special guest that we connected at a variety of conferences. I've known about them for a while, and I'm really excited to share more about what they're doing in our space. For those that are not familiar with myself or the Blockchain Legal Institute, really we're centralized library of resources, so you can understand where to go for your resources to kind of do your research. And if you have questions, whether it's in the compliance, in the tool side, or any of the other sides, send information, ask your questions. We will provide the resources and links, whether it's through additional talk shows or on the library itself, because the library is constantly evolving. So, Scott, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. We're going through a little bit of a heat wave here in Toronto, but we're getting through it.
Yeah. So, so you mentioned that you're Toronto-based, but you are globally doing a variety of exciting things around the world. How did you get started in this space?
I started getting into mining, I think it was like 2014, 2015-ish with Ethereum. Actually, I think it was started with Zcash and then some Ethereum and went down the rabbit hole, converted a room in my condo, and then one thing led to another. Next thing you know, we were cutting apart shipping containers in a parking lot. And then that was 2018, I think. People started asking, hey, will you build those for me? Which wasn't really my plan. I just wanted to mine cryptocurrency at the time. But there was enough market behind it, and we saw a need. And slowly but surely went from literally cutting them apart in a parking lot to having 80,000 square foot manufacturing facility, 70 full-time staff, and we're a completely vertically integrated manufacturer of everything from the large data centers all the way down to we even just launched a small little mini at-home miner as well. So we run the gamut in terms of equipment.
That's fascinating. I know that those that are listening to the talk show are both individuals as well as businesses. So let's talk individual for a moment. How would they get involved, or where would they go, and how would they find the resources that you have if they wanted to do something individually?
I guess it would depend on the size of the individual, like in terms of what somebody's wanting to do. We recently launched this little desktop miner that can literally just sit on your desk. It consumes about as much power as charging your cell phone. And it can do a process called lottery mining, where you're not going to get paid every minute, but you have a chance every 10 minutes to win the block of Bitcoin and the block reward, which is about 3.125 Bitcoin right now. So it's a pretty sizable amount. And then from there, we get into building more modular on the data center side of things. So we'll build, we have a backyard unit that is about the size of two standard size pallets. So that could go in a backyard or an industrial unit. And a lot of what plays into that is having a solution like ours that makes it easy and turnkey from the electrical side, but also you've got to find a good value proposition for your electricity, which is one of the big things that we try to help customers with, making it easy to go and deploy where you find that pocket of really cheap energy, and then populate it with your miners and go from there.
So if someone did want to, have something at their home that is in their backyard like that, are you only Canada based? Are you in the US? Where is your geographic distribution?
We're actually probably 95% in the US. We do all of our manufacturing in Toronto. The US is our biggest market by far, but we have shipped units to Korea, Australia, Africa, but all over the world. I think we're in almost every continent now. Well, major developed continent at least. But the majority of our business is US based.
So are there, and this might not be part of your quote unquote job description, but, from a permitting side or anything that someone might need to know if they wanted to do something in their backyard, what would they have to kind of be looking out for?
There's a variety of factors. We give information on the product we make, and then encourage them to go through the proper processes locally there, because it is very different, not even just from state to state, but county to county, city to city will have different restrictions in terms of what you're allowed to put in your backyard or what you're allowed to put on your farm. Noise can be a factor. You wouldn't want to put this in a dense residential area where you're right side by side with other houses. But if you got a decent amount of radius and you can do a noise assessment for it, that's generally the biggest thing that you have to run into. But like I said, some regions don't allow you to put that kind of unit in your back. But the majority of our customers are they're putting it at a commercial or an industrial location. So they might already have a business, or they've got a plaza that they own that they've got excess power in, that they might put that unit to capitalize on that cheaper power.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I know that one of the communities that I've been at is Bermuda, because of speaking at the Bermuda FinTech conference, and so they are heavy on the insurance side. What sort of insurance, would maybe someone who's thinking about this maybe have to think about?
Yeah, again, same thing. It varies. I hate going back to that, but it's what is inspiring as of late is that the insurance industry has adapted, and there actually are products now that allow you to do that. Historically, when I first got into the industry, that there was absolutely nobody they didn't even have a product, and if they did, they made it extremely difficult for you to insure Bitcoin mining.
Yeah.
People would often kind of put it under the guise of it being a data center, and then if something went wrong, the insurance company come in and say, okay, well, you misrepresented what you are. But there are a variety of products that will cover that now, and there certainly wasn't previously. It's not nowhere near as expensive as well as it once was if you were to get insurance. The other thing too that's very positive for the industry is the banks have kind of woken up and they've moved off of this, we're going to ban everybody who's doing Bitcoin mining and we just don't want their business. There's definitely options in the market now to allow you to ensure that you can operate a safe, insured, and protected business.
So again, without putting you on the spot and everything, but how much activity is happening in Maryland because of representing Maryland Blockchain Association? And obviously I have an interest in bringing more activity to Maryland. So what's your knowledge about what's going on in my own state?
Power prices are not the most competitive for larger industrial builds. I can tell you that much. But there's always pockets, and we often get clients that will purchase units that start in one state and get to another. I mean, I am familiar with some that have moved down to try to capitalize on like off-grid solar. So they've got power there and they'd rather consume the power in their backyard rather than pushing it into the grid. But we're seeing that just across the states where there's all these little pockets and people are realizing you can utilize Bitcoin mining to actually help to subsidize these projects, because Bitcoin mining can be, a taker of last resort. So we'll take all of the excess power, and as a result, we ensure that energy producer, or if it's somebody's own solar farm, they're always making money on every kilowatt hour that they generate. And there's going to be somebody who's going to take it, but then the rest of the time when the prices are up, the Bitcoin mine can turn off and they can sell it to the grid, or they can consume it for themselves, which is a big advantage of Bitcoin mining that a lot of people they overlook. You hear, the negative narrative in terms of what Bitcoin mining is doing to the grid and how it's bad for energy prices. The reality is, if you use it the right way, it can actually help to lower energy prices. It can make these green energy projects more viable and really be a benefit to the grid or electrical producer rather than a burden.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I know that I have a variety of listeners, both that are experienced in this area as well as that are brand new. Can you share a little bit more details about how this grid exchange actually can work, so they can understand the energy exchange, the Bitcoin mining is actually positive?
Sorry.
That's okay. That's all right.
I thought I muted everything there.
Good.
Yeah, so it's, And I'm going to give a specific example where the reverse happened. But I mean, most of the energy cost, our grid consumption looks much like a bell curve. We need that top of that bell curve in terms of capacity. When it's a really hot day, like we actually just had a blackout in part of Toronto yesterday in a small area, but because the temperatures were up to, I think, 43 degrees Celsius, which is 108 or something Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And we have to build our energy grid and our generation to be able to handle that one peak day that might happen 5 or 6% of the time out of the year. The rest of the time, the capacity is going underutilized. You have all this excess capacity that you have to pay for, if it's wind, if it's solar, if it's hydroelectric, that you're paying for throughout the average of all of your kilowatt hours. Well, if you have a consumer that can come on and say, you know what, I'm going to take the other side of that bell curve when it was completely idle, and it's something that's not, it's not natural gas or it's not coal where you've got to consume a hydrocarbon in order to generate power. Solar and wind and hydroelectric will sit and generate, or nuclear will sit and generate 24/7. Well, obviously not solar, but those other producers can generate almost 24/7, which, if you can go and consume all of that excess capacity, that lowers the price for everybody else on the grid, because now that fixed asset that has a fixed cost is costing less for everybody else because you've got more revenue coming into it. As an example, in Texas, they have all these wind turbines that were built, and sometimes you'll get the wind just howling at night, and there's so much energy being produced, they have to pay the grid to take the power. So it's called a negative rate environment. And now that wind generator, he needs to charge more for his electricity when he is able to sell it in order to offset the negative rate environment. So if you have somebody that ensures that you will never generate a negative rate, or you'll never be making nothing from your excess power, that allows us to lower the energy costs across the board for all consumers, not just for the Bitcoin miner. There was a region in Norway that famously had a Bitcoin mining farm there. Now, the Bitcoin mining farm, we were speaking earlier about, permits did not go through the proper processes. However, they were there for a while, and eventually there was enough of an uprising based on the noise. They put it too close to a school, I think it was, and they were forced to leave. Power bills went up on average between $200 to $300 per year in that community once Bitcoin mining had left, and that taker of last resort was no longer there to take the power. Now, the way they went about executing that farm and not doing the proper permits is not something that we endorse or condone, but it gives you an example of just how dramatic a savings it can be for everybody across the board, and help to benefit some of these green energy projects that might have a harder time getting financing because they've got the risk of a negative rate environment. Now you say, okay, well, I guarantee I've got a customer 24/7 that's going to take at least this much of the power at this price. And when the energy prices go up, then I'll sell to the grid during those other times. Because Bitcoin mining is one of the only electrical loads at this size, like there can be hundreds of megawatts, that can be turned off at the drop of a hat. Like, you need a little bit of notice, but it's a real-time curtailable load. So much so that I'm going to go back to Texas as an example, because they have a relatively unique energy market in ERCOT there. The grid realized that it is cheaper for them to pay an incentive to the Bitcoin mining to turn off, rather than go build a natural gas power plant in order to deal with that extra peak. Some producers in previous years, in certain quarters, made, and when I say producers, Bitcoin mining producers, made more money turning off their power from the grid from incentives than they did actually mining Bitcoin, because it's that much of a benefit. Wow. And it's public knowledge. Riot Blockchain, they're a large public company.
Yeah, I know Riot. Yeah.
So, and that's one of the big stories. There's other ones as well, but that was a really well publicized story where that occurred.
No, that's really interesting. I'm, again, trying to learn more about this energy and the I'll call it the politics behind it, in terms of how do you kind of create the balance for both the green community as well as for our decentralized finance community. Where do you see the industry going, especially with this trend of going towards Bitcoin reserves and things like that? Where do you see our community heading?
Well, hopefully to the moon. I think it's going to be a big year if we're talking price wise. I think once we see the U.S. on a federal level move to having a strategic Bitcoin reserve, it's been inspirational to see the number of states that have either put bills forward or have passed bills. I had the pleasure of meeting one of the leads on the project in New Hampshire and what he was able to do with their strategic Bitcoin reserve on a state level. I think Arizona, I can't remember how many others have now have just jumped on board, and seeing Bitcoin companies or not Bitcoin companies, regular company, non-Bitcoin companies, moving to having that as a treasury and using it as just as it's meant to be, a big store of value, is amazing considering where we were 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I think that the adoption that's happening right now on a corporate and institutional level is just the tip of the iceberg.
I agree with you. So you shared this really small little tech device that I thought was really cool. What other things are on the plate for what you're developing and what we should be aware about?
We're going to make a variety of variations of this little guy. And I should highlight, this is $99. So it's meant to allow everybody to get in there. Like, how many times you hear people go back in time and say, well, you know what, I wish I threw $100 into Bitcoin 10 years ago. Well,
now you can.
This is like a little lottery ticket that gives you a chance to do that, basically. And it's not a lottery officially, just lawyers out there.
Yeah, we'll do our financial disclaimer after.
Yes. It's it's serving it really as a tool. Like, it's not a moneymaker for us. It's serving as a tool to get people into the industry and understand what's needed to open a wallet, set up a wallet, and be able to have a little bit of financial freedom outside of the regular financial markets.
No, I think that's great. So again, I'll just do the disclaimers. This is not legal advice, financial advice, or investment advice. You can definitely do your own research. But the links so you can kind of check out everything that we're talking about will be in the blog below. Any last minute comments before we sign off?
No, if you haven't already and you were considering it, you feel that you've missed the boat on mining Bitcoin, whether it be on a small level like we talked about, or even one of our product we call NanoPOD, which is about 20 miners, you certainly haven't. In fact, there's more tools and resources at your disposal, both permitting, insurance, and banking wise. Just do your research. You don't dive into it when the market is at its all-time high. Buying Bitcoin mining infrastructure and equipment is a lot like buying Bitcoin, in the sense that, like, you don't want to buy it at the peak when absolutely everybody's mother, brother, and sister is running out to buy it. Like, you usually want to try to wait for one of those lulls. Same thing applies on the equipment side, but you definitely not miss the boat. There's lots of opportunities.
There's definitely a lot of opportunities, and like with everything else, everyone who's listening, you have to do your own research, but you also need to be looking at how is this best for you and your family. So it is important for you to educate yourself, and the resources that we're providing will help you do that. So for everyone that's listening, thank you so much, and stay tuned for our next talk, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much for having us.